Hello and welcome to Deprogrammed on Unsafe Space. I am your host, Keri Smith, and I'm joined today by my occasional co-host, Carter Laren. Hello,
Howdy.
Carter. Looking
Howdy,
very
Keri.
dashing today.
You like these
And
outfits, so I'm keeping it up.
I think I really like that style on you. I think you should continue.
Okay.
I'm really excited about our guest today, Carter. We are joined by Seerut Chawla. You guys can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Seerut K Chawla. That's SeerutKChawla, and we'll put the links in the description. She is a therapist who is located in the UK and is pretty exceptional in my opinion because she's one of the few therapists I've seen on social media who is not pushing woke ideology, who is not moving with the tribe, and in fact has taken some heat for saying things that don't necessarily align with the belief system. So I'm very excited to have someone who's a professional here today to talk to us on our unprofessional show about woke ideology and therapy. Welcome, Seerut.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here too, actually. I've been following you for a little while, and I think your story is so interesting. And I watched a bit of you on Benjamin Boyce, and yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you. He's wonderful.
Yeah, like we were saying beforehand, before we started recording, at least when I talked to him, I found he asked questions that were really not questions I'd had before. He's very interesting.
Yeah, he's a really talented interviewer.
And I liked your interview with him. So, well, I'm really excited to talk to you because Carter and I we theorize sometimes about the psychology behind my old belief system, behind social justice ideology. And we've had some discussions with people who also, and some who focus specifically on the psychological aspects, but I can't recall us having a therapist on. I think this is the first time we've been able to talk to someone, a professional about this belief system and some of our theories. And so, I guess my first question for you would be, how did you find yourself on Twitter and social media, and how did you find yourself being a voice going against the pack?
Somehow I always find myself in this position. I don't know exactly how. I always find myself a little bit out of sync with the larger group. But I started this Instagram page a couple of years ago, which is it's a professional page, it's a therapy page, and being both a therapist and someone with PTSD, I think the popular way of saying it is like trauma survivor. I thought it'd be really nice to have some way to offer just information, sense making for people who maybe haven't gotten to that phase yet of like making meaning of what's happened to you, and to connect with trauma survivors. And it's been an interesting curve. So this is how it started. And then I got involved in this very, very, very popular niche of Instagram therapists. And the therapists on there are largely North American. So it's dominated by, anyway, we know the field of therapy is dominated by women. So women and North Americans, and generally, people from the West, the Anglosphere. And everyone mostly has the same position on everything. And initially I started sort of adopting it, and I thought, well, if they all think this must be the way to think about things. So initially it was very related to therapy, how to think about therapy, and this whole trauma-informed idea, which I've come to realize it's not psychotherapeutic. It's completely ideological and political. And some of the ideas, they started to, when you read something and it puts you in a very, very slight position of discomfort, but you're not sure why. So it started like that. And I'm like sort of looking at this and I'm like, I haven't found this to be true. And that was the genesis of it. And then I started really paying attention to, well, why have I adopted this? and why do I think this, and how do these ideas actually play out in my work, not on Instagram, but with clients and what I know of clients. Because I think it's very seductive to throw away what we know is mainstream knowledge, not just in therapy, not just politically, but just everything. You not have the biohackers or the slightly odd nutrition people. Like everyone is into this. Throw away the mainstream knowledge and look at us. Aren't we clever? We've just figured it all out. And I think, and I kept it to myself. And I was just sort of started slowly veering away from what everybody else thought and said. And I have a hard time, keeping my mouth shut. So if I really think something, I kind of have to say it. So if I, especially when it's a page where you're sharing your thoughts and ideas, which is how I view Instagram. I don't view it as, I'm not everybody's therapist. I'm not your parent. I'm not a guru. I'm just here and I'm sharing my ideas and things I know to be true as a therapist that help people. And so I'm sharing these ideas, and I notice people are getting more and more angry with me. So that's starting to sort of, it was interesting. And then I started thinking, well, why are people angry with me? What's so offensive about some of these things that think?
Can you just pause and give us an example of some ideas you were giving that people were getting upset about? Like, what were you saying? Like the ideas of over-validating, coddling, that these are somehow psychotherapeutically useful. They're not. Over validation is touted like as if it's a therapeutic skill, and it's not. When a client says something to you, you shouldn't be jumping at them saying, "Oh, I validate you." That's over-identifying. What instead you want to do is, okay, well, why do you think that? And how is that playing up in your life, and where might that come from? And how does that impact you in the here and now if it's from before? And it's a completely different paradigm to, oh, I totally validate you. And validation doesn't have to be so overt that you have to sort of jump at the person and give them a cuddle. Validation can also be sitting there with them, being completely present, being a warm, sort of neutral yet compassionate witness of what someone's going through, not judging them. We take things somehow and make them really stupid. And I think that's what we're doing. So... I want to clarify because I'm trying to make sure I understand. So when you're talking about validating people, are you saying like there's a difference between validating, yes, I see that you feel this way, or validating the conclusion about why you feel this way, or that you ought to feel this way? Is that the distinction you're trying to make? Yeah.
And I think even that is the distinction I'm trying to make. And I think in general, in your day-to-day lives with people, relationships that aren't a client therapist relationship, of course you go into them and say, yeah, of course I accept and understand and can empathize with why you feel that way. But as a therapist, that can sometimes be bringing too much of yourself into the therapist-client relationship, because it's not for me to say that's the right thing or the wrong thing. It's for me to help the client figure out if that's the right thing or wrong thing for them.
So more being a mirror and not a shoulder to cry on in the kind of colloquial sense.
Yeah, and sometimes you are a shoulder to cry on. That is part of the work. And sometimes you are there for someone to just, sometimes people have never had someone just listen to them without jumping in to fix it, without looking over their shoulder at what else is going on in the room, without waiting for them to shut up so that you can say what you think. And yeah, this happened to me too. And a lot of people haven't had that experience. So that's that's really powerful, actually. But you need to progress from there. You don't get stuck in that stage. That's why therapy is a bit of a
a bit of a journey, for a lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have
I didn't
you
mean to
had?
interrupt. We can keep going with where you were going with. You were telling
Please
a story and I
continue.
kind of stopped you.
No,
just to
I'm
make
glad
it-
you did, because I wanted to also ask, this is related. Carter asked, what were some of the things that you said that got you in trouble with the herd, for lack of a better word? But I wanted to ask the flip side of that question, which are what are some of the things that they're saying, that the woke therapists are saying, that you don't agree with?
And everything.
Good. There we go.
Pretty much everything that they have to say, I just look at, and there's that gif of Clint Eastwood kind of looking like the grandpa, like, get off my lawn, angry old man. That's literally my face almost every time I see something that they have to say, like, get the fuck off my lawn, kids. Pretty much everything, because they're it's not based in psychotherapeutic theory. I think that's okay. I think I know exactly what it is. It's psychotherapy, and psychotherapeutic theory has ended and political theory has come in. That's what I don't like. You are not helping people. You are making it all about you and your politics and your ideas of the world. And you're not doing therapy. You're doing something else and calling it therapy. And you're kind of ruining our field.
This is what we noticed this with, we did a video with Tom Goldman, and it was about the APA, the American Psychiatric Association's new guidelines that they'd issued for working with men and boys, for therapists, for treating men and boys. And the guidelines were absolutely what you're describing. They were ideological in nature. They were political in nature. It was telling therapists to come into a therapeutic situation and to then put this belief system that they have on men and boys and interpret everything they're there to talk about through this lens of toxic masculinity and patriarchy and male privilege and all this stuff. So
it seems to me that psychology is so nascent that, unlike something like physics, where you get some empirical data maybe and you make some theories, but then you test the theories and it's pretty clear whether they're working or not. Like I guess people can argue about string theory, but no one cares. It's not implemented anywhere really. So, but psychology seems to be, it's very nascent, and I know there is a lot of empirical evidence and people have done a lot of research and kind of detected behavior patterns, and it's kind of merging with, neurology in some sense sometimes, right? There's like that's happening, but what checks are there in the profession to prevent random theorizing? Because it started out with random theorizing. I mean, Freud was pretty much like randomly theorizing stuff, right? Which isn't very scientific, but it's a place to start. And what checks are there in place to prevent kind of random theorizing? Because what I see from the woke left is often just statement of random theories as if they're fact, and then using those as premises to build entire systems on.
Well, that's a really, really important point, because, well, in psychology, there's been a sort of replication crisis. So you have all these studies that aren't replicable. So that's a problem. And then therapy is different to psychology, though. And so much of it is based on theory. And some of those theories are outdated. And when things are outdated, you should slough them off. But you don't throw out everything. And I think it's sort of... So the checks and balances, I suppose, are that we're all regulated, or we should be. So we all have boards that have codes of ethics. We should be taught how to, manage ourselves and, in a sense, regulate ourselves as therapists. But then the random theorizing of wokeness has infected therapy. So you have...
and the regulation bodies.
Yeah, and regulatory bodies. So things like, for the APA to call masculinity toxic is well, it's pretty disgusting, isn't it? Like, how else can you take that? Of course. Yeah. And so what might it makes me so angry. And like, for example, we know that far more men commit suicide than women, and they already don't seek help. And men tend to, depression already is a very, very sneaky thing. You don't always see it coming. You kind of wake up one day and you're like, shit, I'm in the hole, it's happened, I'm here. And we already have so much cultural stuff with sort of these prescriptive gender roles, and we want men to be stoic and all these sorts of things. And yeah, there's all these factors in the way of men getting help. And maybe therapy isn't for every man, because there are sex differences, and there's so much that men are discouraged from doing, like expressing healthy aggression, which I think is quite important to being psychologically healthy. And now the APA is saying stuff about toxic masculinity. Well, how many more men are we putting off from getting help if they need it? It's quite, the ideological possession of therapy. I mean, the ship has sailed. We're here. We're in it, and it's kind of a scary time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, men, I noticed, this may be just my personal experience, but I think a lot of men get psychological needs met by not through sitting and talking through things, but through doing physical activity with other men.
Yeah.
That's often just kind of unspoken. Like, you go hunting, or you go fishing, or you go sparring with someone, or you do something, you play sports, and there's a relief, and like sometimes there's a little bit of conversation, but often there's just kind of physicality and being present with other males that can really booster your, whatever issues you're having. Sometimes it can really give you the energy and strength you need to kind of move forward. And I see those kind of activities being vilified generally. Guys getting together in groups is not something you really see much outside of sports. You don't see a lot of that. At least I don't. Like, women can have women's circles, but if guys say, I'm going to start a club for guys and we're going to hang out and smoke cigars and fish, that's viewed as misogynistic and horrible, and I'm supposed to be letting women in.
Yeah. Well, then they're called MRAs and they get cancelled, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Which is what happened to the guy we interviewed about the APA and the guidelines on men, Tom Golden. I'm getting his name right, Carter?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He gets called MRA, men's rights activist, and vilified the same way they vilify, they put these labels on people, and like TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminists, and then vilify, and they've definitely done that, I think, to people who have an interest in talking about anything related to men and statistics. Like you mentioned, more men likely to commit suicide. People don't even seem to know stats like that, because if you talk about them, you're an MRA,
Yeah.
I've seen the woke on Twitter say, if you bring stats like that up, I've seen some of the people say good. Right?
No.
Like that's the response. Which kind of leads me to my next question.
Yeah.
Are we experiencing right now some sort of mass personality disorder that's being played out?
I'm going to rein in myself for a second. Shouting, yes! Probably not very responsible. And let me just, I'll caveat that by saying that's my personal experience, my lived experience, that there's a lot of
can't argue with that.
Off limits for disagreement.
And I'm brown, right?
Oh, and you're brown. Oh, and a woman.
So, well, we have a bit of research behind it. So we have the tendency for interpersonal victimhood, which was a study done in Israel. And while it was done on individuals, it does have group application. And I think Scott Kaufman Barry has talked about this. Scott Barry Kaufman, I can say his name backwards. He's talked about this, and I think that's what you see in the woke. So they have four key features. So it's not a personality disorder, it's a personality construct. which is sort of like not a full blown disorder, but it's like a set of traits that people have. And the one that always sticks out for me is moral elitism. And I think that's kind of the hallmark of every single woke person you come across. Even in their doctrine, right? They talk about false consciousness. Anyone who doesn't think that way, well, you're just not conscious enough, and you're some pleb with false consciousness. And you see it in the way they speak to people. Like they talk to people like you're a very stupid child. And if you don't already know this, there's clearly something very wrong with you. You're deficient in some way. Or they talk to, I don't know why this is, but I see this constantly, even from people I follow on Instagram, which is sort of like, if you don't believe in this, unfollow me. And
it's such that all the time. Yeah. Which, by the way, lazy. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't want me following you, I'm going to make you find me amongst all of your other friends and delete me yourself. I'm not doing the work for you.
I know. So many people have unfollowed me, and I haven't even bothered going through my friend list to see who it is and who to.
Yeah, it's too many.
Like, follow me or don't follow me. It doesn't actually.
But how arrogant is that? That's another thing about them. How arrogant. It's like, I can't imagine saying, if you don't like what I'm posting today, unfollow me. It's like, wait a minute, you're insulting me and you're asking me to do work for you? Like, I'm not going to unfollow you. Sorry. So moral elitism, that's one. Yeah. I've definitely seen that with them. They're up on a high horse. That's totally unearned. What is the second one?
I'm going to pull up because I did an Instagram post on this. Okay. And I'm going to pull that up because
I'm sure they loved that.
They sub-posted me for months. They made posts and posts and posts about the one that I remember quite clearly is, before we call people a victim, why haven't we validated their pain? It's like, well, it's not actually related to actual victimhood, but anyway, facts don't matter, do they?
Well, your latest Instagram post will piss a lot of people off and is related to the title of our show, which is the best safe space is feeling like an empowered, competent, resilient adult. I love that post.
Yes.
You're not allowed to feel that way.
Yeah.
You have to feel like an incompetent, fragile.
Right. Well, there's that. I'll ask you about this later, I guess, more, but there's that drama triangle, right, of persecutor. What is it? Persecutor, rescuer, and victim?
Yeah. Persecutor, tyrant, victim, and rescuer. So that's definitely very... very related, because it's the drama triangle playing out, because they like to be in the position of both victim and rescuer, because there's so much saviorism to this. So even the way they look at us, like people of color, whether or not you're competent, intelligent, resilient, whether or not you want to be saved or need them to save you, they want to jump in and save you. And I find that it's really similar to colonialism, with the white man's burden.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as colonialism.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're forcing their assistance on you.
Yeah. They force their assistance on you whether you want it or not. And if you don't want it, then you're just white supremacist then, whether or not you're white. Yeah. I've been called
now
a white
you're an
supremacist
oppressor
so many times. And it's like, I'm from India, which is like famously colonized part of the British Empire.
Actually colonized. Yes.
Yeah. So I found it. The 4 features are: 1, constantly seeking recognition for your victimhood. So that is, that's constant, isn't it? It's constantly, I was, someone didn't smile at me on the street. So that's a microaggression. And I'm going to put that on Facebook and I'm going to sort of really make something out of it. It's not just recognition for victimhood doing that. You're also actively it's like self-harm. What if the person just doesn't like smiling? Maybe it's someone who's traumatized. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they didn't even see you. How many billion other...
They went to the dentist and they're numb.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of dumb ideas, but yeah, totally.
No, it is totally this ideology. So when I was in it definitely encourages you. It tells you to put on these glasses every day so that you're looking for the racism and sexism and everything. And you are interpreting everything and they teach you how to do this. I learned how to do it in college. The critical theory classes I was taking, the women's studies classes, queer theory, we would watch movies and then have to write papers about like viewing this movie through a heterosexist lens and pulling out all of the heterosexism in this movie. And so they're teaching you to like watch a movie and write a paper about all the ways that you may not have noticed that it centers straightness or it centers maleness or whiteness.
Sorry, I think that's so funny, Keri, because I'm imagining in my head, like reviewing a movie, and notice how they center breathing. Yeah, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for heteronormativity. Like, most people are heterosexual. That doesn't mean not being heterosexual is bad, but that's how we got here. Like, that's how we procreate.
And if it was, like, normative, why has everyone since the beginning of time done it?
Yeah.
Right.
Why is it universal?
Well, they
Why is
conflate normal with good morally. They conflate
Like a sign of value
statistic
judgment.
normalcy with with a value judgment of morality, which no one actually means, but they do.
Yeah, normal is just what most of the people do most of the time. That's all
Right.
normal means. It doesn't mean that if you are an outlier in some ways, and we all are, that you're not that you're abnormal or pathological or anything else. Like, I can't think of a single person I know who has a problem with people who are gay. I can't think of
me neither.
one single person. Even my 70-year-old Indian dad is like very proud, and like one of his friends is gay, and my dad likes to tell, this is my gay friend and I'm really proud of him. And he's like sort of, it's like such a weird thing. It's sort of so against everything you're conditioned into as an Indian person. So, the fact that one of his friends actually came out and he knows that, he's out. And my dad he does it very badly, but he really wants to support him. And he really wants people to know that, like, this is my friend and he's great. And, like most people, they aren't going out there trying to hurt other people. The only people I see really doing that are the woke. Anyone who's not in the in-group, they want to... I think this is going to sound probably quite extreme, but having experienced cancellation, I think they actually want to annihilate you. They want to fully destroy you.
Oh, that doesn't sound
I don't think
extreme.
that's wrong. It's not extreme.
That is correct. They want to. We've been able to interview several small business owners who've been the target of cancellation of mobs, and where people have tried to get their businesses shut down and contacted every person who's ever worked with them and leaned on those people to make statements denouncing them, and really tried to isolate and cut these people off from everyone, got them banned from yarn conventions in the knitting world, things like that. Mm-hmm. And it is like you're saying, they don't just want it. It's not like voting with your feet where you say, I don't support what you're doing, Rice Krispies, therefore I'm not going to buy you anymore. It's more than that. It's trying to cut your feet off. And really so that you can't make a living, and that no one can buy your products, and that no one can associate with you. And it is absolute. They're trying to decimate you. I think that you're right about that.
Yeah. I think they want the feeling I had going through it was that they wanted to torment me to the point that I had a nervous breakdown and killed myself. That's how it felt. That's how
they
it felt.
do, though. That is what they want, I think.
Yeah, I think they do too.
Which is pretty sadistic. But.
Have you ever talked to there's a psychopathic?
Yeah.
Yes. Have you ever talked to this guy in the knitting world, Sockmatician?
I don't think so.
You should check this guy out, and I'm going to send you his story, because he was one of the big knitting influencers who got he got mobbed, and what's crazy is he was part of the social justice world. I mean, he's a gay man, he's HIV positive, he's one of the most popular knitters. He coined the diverse knitty hashtag, which is a popular hashtag about diversity in knitting, and they came after him because he was calling for civility and for rational heads and for all the fighting to stop the toxicity, not understanding that they would accuse him of tone policing. And they came after him so hard and so viciously that his husband had to check him into the hospital on suicide watch. And they were still posting, and his husband went, this gives me chills when his husband posted something like, all of your hatred has been received. Please now send love, like he's in the hospital. And they still replied, good, like, I hope he kills himself, that kind of stuff, So it made me think of what you were saying. So I'm going to send you one of his videos. Don't let me forget.
Okay.
But yeah, so getting back on track,
he's in the UK as well, right? You're in the UK.
He's in the UK,
right?
yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yes.
Okay, I definitely want to follow and get in touch. Yeah.
So he's lived through all of that. So you were mentioning, to get us back on track, you were saying that the four key features of what is now being called this personality construct is constantly seeking recognition for your victimhood, moral elitism,
a lack of empathy for the pain and suffering of others. So, and that's a big one. And that's a really important one, because this is sort of tribalism on steroids, isn't it? And anyone who's not in the tribe or not in the in-group or has false consciousness or has dared to have an idea that isn't in the small, narrowly shifting window of pre-approved woke opinions, well, you don't deserve empathy. You deserve to be destroyed and to never be able to make a living. I can think of a few people. There's a girl on Lovely friend of mine, really lovely, called Clementine Morgan, and she's actually a socialist, but she's not woke. And so they're trying to I mean, the lies they make up about this poor woman, just bloody horrific. And it's like they want to. This is a teenage runaway with PTSD who lived on the streets and had to survive with sex work. So, the poster child for somebody that you'd think the woke would care about. And she, for the first time in her life, has found some financial stability by writing. And she writes these exquisitely beautiful zines and sells them through her website. And she's written a few books, and she's talented. And they made it so her publisher dropped her. Imagine after all that, you get a book deal. After all that, that's your life. And they made it so her publisher dropped her.
Wow.
They are psychopathic.
Yeah. The lack of empathy thing is something I noticed when I was still in the social justice world around the 2016 election. After Trump was elected, I saw a spate of articles being shared in my echo chamber, and I had whittled my echo chamber down to just social justice people. And there were a spate of articles and opinion pieces written that in the headlines were all, arguing against empathy for Trump voters. And that was a red flag for me.
Yeah.
It was sort of, wait, why would you be arguing against empathy and trying to get people to kill that part of themselves?
Well, they don't have empathy really, and it's like I tweeted this recently that we're so short on actual empathy, or we're completely overrun by this sort of toxic form of compassion, like the saviorism and the rescuer. But it's not a rescuer that wants to rescue you always for your sake. It's a rescuer that wants to rescue you the way a missionary wants to rescue a heathen, right? Like it is so colonial in that aspect. And if they want to take on the position of rescuer and you don't oblige by taking on the position of victim, then they take on the position of the tyrant.
Yeah.
While they pretend that they're the victim. It's like I see this constantly as well, where they do something. So like cancel culture is such a mind fuck in a way. Sorry, I swear quite a lot. Okay.
Oh, that was the first time. That was pretty good for us.
No.
Cancel culture is, it's such a mind fuck because you're being abused, and it is abuse because there's no escape from it. If your income in some way is tied to being online, well, how you don't have an option. You have to be there because you have to. There's if someone's abusing you in the real world. Not that that's any better, but you at least can put the phone down or leave the room or make an escape plan. There's no escape from this.
Yeah.
There's no leaving the room. There's no phone you can put down. Unless you're willing to suffer very real material loss, and go and live in like a cabin in the woods or something for a little while, especially if you live in a woke area, like people, like the poor few anti-woke people in Portland, probably like being trapped in Dante's Inferno, like hell on earth. And so you're being abused while you're being told that you are an abuser. What
Yes.
kind of psychopathic thing is that to do to someone?
Yes.
So you have no
It's-
right, you have no support.
I've read a lot about this recently because I have had interactions on a personal level with someone I believe is sociopathic. And I've read about Darvo. Can you explain what that is for people?
So that's originally it's meant to be about victims of actual abuse. The woke completely misuse it. So it was supposed to be for people who've been through domestic violence, not someone who has an opinion you don't like, and they're like, and you shout at them and they say, I don't want to listen to you, and then they start shouting Darvo. It doesn't apply to that.
Yeah.
No.
They do the same with gaslighting. They misuse it.
Yeah, disagreement is not gaslighting. Gaslighting is somebody trying to make you actually question your sanity, sort of get to the point where you don't know what's real and what's not, and that's quite an extreme thing. It's not in the theory. It's another colloquial thing, but it's not someone saying, no, you've got that fact wrong. This is the actual fact. That's not gaslighting. Or someone saying to you that, no, having a safe space at university that's full of puppies and Play-Doh, that's not good for you. That's not gaslighting. That's a different opinion. But they don't seem to be able to understand this. So Darvo is something like deny, reverse the victim and offender, and then attack them back, something like that. I can't remember the exact acronym. And it's exactly what they do. It's like cry bullying,
Yes.
like going and beating
Yes.
somebody up, and they give you a slap back, and then you start saying, abuser, he slapped me. Well, what did you do? Why did you get slapped?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
They do.
Can I-
It's like an extreme kind of projection.
Yeah, well, it is. It's like a mass delusion alongside mass projection. And even if the individuals, and lots of them are, like, genuinely caring people who probably have way too high levels of empathy, who aren't very logical, I think. Lots of them are like that. Their group behavior, though, it's psychopathic. The group behavior is just it's horrifying. If it imagine if it was an illiberal country where they got, like we've seen in history, like communism. Look what
I think we're
communism-
moving towards an illiberal country precisely because of their behavior and their popularity. Something struck me that, so in the bullying cancel culture dynamic, well, in a relationship dynamic, there's typically, if you're dealing with someone with a personality disorder, there's typically an enabler, and they make sure that they have an enabler around, usually, who's kind of doing all of the work to allow them to shift between their preferred roles in that drama triangle. And often that enabler is in that savior spot, right? But in cancel culture, I don't think there's actually enough of these people to cancel you. There's a large contingency of the population who are enablers, and I don't think they're doing it necessarily intentionally, but they're standing on the sidelines and letting this happen rather than pushing back. Does that seem like it makes sense? And if that's true, how do we stop that?
I don't know if I have the answer to that, because I think it's a really complex question, because the enablers are the media, corporations, Hollywood, social media. The enablers are people with great institutional power. The government now in America, well, they have institutional power behind some of these ideas that aren't rooted in reality. So, like this epidemic of police brutality against Black people. Well, where's the data that shows that? There isn't any. Doesn't show that at all. That's actually not the case. But now you have the government sort of like not just behaving like a nanny state, but behaving like a state that wants to indoctrinate. So like they behave like the resistance, but they're actually the Death Star. I think James Lindsay said that.
Yes.
Death Star.
It's Darvo.
Yeah. I wish I thought of that myself. I didn't. James Lindsay did, and it's exactly what it is. They're LARPing, and they behave like they're the resistance. But there's no one in their way for them to be resisting anything. There's no one in the way. Everyone's making it easy for you, and your enablers are literally everything that has great amounts of power. So, like my friend who got dropped by a publishing company, or like when Jordan Peterson's publisher, I've forgotten who it was now, announced that they're publishing his second book, and the employees started crying.
Yes. Or the Spotify employees who
maybe
walked
they were
out
so
because
happy.
of Joe. Wait. The Spotify employees who walked out because of Joe Rogan. And they were doing like struggle sessions.
Goodbye.
Yeah, let them leave.
Yeah. Oh, well, I did you see Basecamp lost I think the CEO just said something like, I don't want to talk about politics at work.
Yeah.
And something like 30% of the people, like a huge percentage left.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, I mean, yeah, but it sucks. It sucks for the CEO. It sucks for the company.
Well, the CEO,
Man.
I think because he did that, he's going to attract people that want an environment where you go to work to fucking work. That's what work is for.
Yeah, in the long term, it's good. It's just short term pain. That's like that's a blow to take.
But it's good.
He sounds like someone who's willing to take that. I mean, I'm sure he's not stupid. I'm sure he knows things got out of hand, and like this is the same with the people who started crying because of Jordan Peterson. It's like it's not like, this isn't a creche. Like, do you know why you have a job? It's because you have skills that you're going to get paid for, and then you go home, and that's the end of the story. They're not your parents. They're not your nanny. It's not a nursery. It's not you. Like, how has university prepared any of these people for the world? They haven't. They've come from university where they have the nursery, like safe spaces full of Play-Doh and cookies, and then they think that work is meant to be like that.
Yeah. But they're remaking work. That's the interesting thing, because it makes me think of one of the many things I saw that started to help wake me up was the video with the Nicholas Christakis at Yale University, where the students were surrounding him and yelling at him about his wife's email about Halloween costumes. And in this video, oh my goodness, one of the students starts screaming at him hysterically and saying, "It's your job to keep us safe." And it's like, it's not his job to keep you safe. And looking at that, however long ago that was, I think it was 2017. At the time, people were saying to me, well, like some people in the liberals are saying, well, you're right, this is a problem at college campuses, but these people aren't going to be prepared for the real world, and they're going to have a harsh awakening in the real world.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. They're actually remaking our institutions once they get into the real world, or they're trying their damnedest to change Spotify, to change these publishing companies and to turn them into the same thing that the academic institutions have been turned into, which is preschools.
They want like, it's just like they want to turn every man into a neutered house cat, and they want to turn all of universities into a creche, and they want to turn work into, well, I don't know what they think work is meant to be. I really do. They understand the concept of work? Let's start there.
I think they view work as an outlet for activism, and that's what they're going to turn it into. And I think, because we have so much wealth in this country, they can live off that borrowed time for a while, but eventually China wins, or other places that are like, we're working, we're producing things. You guys can have your activist companies over there and live off of your stored value, but eventually that will die. It's not a long-term solution. Okay, so wait, we had 3 things. Let's get to your 4th, because I feel like we're dragging it out. So let's recap the 3 things. The first one was moral superiority. The second one, I think, was a victim.
Yeah, constantly seeking recognition for victimhood. And then lack of empathy and for the pain and suffering of others. And the last one is frequently ruminating about past victimization.
Frequently ruminating about past. Like
So
wallowing in your
ruminating is
past
sort of like-
victimization. Okay.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, it's when you're constantly thinking about mulling over and being a little bit obsessive with your thoughts about something. Like, just like with the, someone didn't smile at me, it's a microaggression. Then you ruminate on it all day until you've really worked yourself up. And turned it into something that it might not be. And the way you were talking about how you were conditioned to go into a situation and try and find like ruining movies for people, like go into a movie and find what's wrong with it. So by condition, when we know what that is, we have a word for that. It's confirmation bias. And when you do that, then you're going to find what it is that you want to find, because you've sort of adapted your lens to be seeking this information or to be seeing it when it isn't there. And they have a sort of like a made up answer for everything. It's like, if you don't see it, it's because, you're not woke enough.
Yeah.
Right.
And it because the lens is so, like you said, it's confirmation bias. You're attuned to find it no matter what. Then they continually, here's a weird phenomenon that happens when they've purged all the wrong thinkers from a community and then just the woke remain. They start attacking one another because they still have the lens.
Yeah.
And so in the, there've been the social justice wars in the knitting world, but also in the sewist world, there's a whole community of people who make their own patterns and sell fabrics and do fabrics. And in the sewist world, recently we saw they had it's a woke community. It's made for woke sewists. And there was infighting over someone who's a black woman who posted a fabric with stripes on it. And then an indigenous woman said that's racist fabric because there were stripes like that on smallpox blankets. And then the black woman wouldn't apologize. And the indigenous woman, continued to talk about her racism for not apologizing. And it just turned into an outright war where members of, then they're purging themselves. Carter's laughing. They purged the black.
It's so pathetic and funny. I know.
but they will continue to find it, and you're like, wait a minute. From the outside looking in, you're like, wait, what are they fighting about? And it's like they're fighting about stripes on a fabric.
If your biggest problem is that a piece of fabric is racist, you don't have any problems. Like, have you looked around the world? Like, fabric is racist. Like, this is where we are now. This is the kind of like high level thinking that we're getting from university students. Fabric is racist.
Look how think about it this way. Think about how great things must be for us in the West. That's what we get all verklempt about is stripes on fabric. I mean, life must be awesome generally.
It is. That's the thing.
It's pretty great.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
I have a really serious.
Sorry, I want to clarify something because I'm starting to view the woke crowd as 2 distinct groups of people, and I'm wondering if that fits the 4 items or if I'm seeing something that's not there. But when I learned about the drama triangle thing, I started to realize, like, I think there's a group of people who are centered around victim status, like they're trying to constantly be the victims, and obviously the people move momentarily in and out so that they can remain in the one they want. But there's a separate, and I'll say mostly middle-aged white ladies who are upper middle class, as like the general, probably psychologists, therapists, right? Who are the saviors, the rescuers, and they don't actually act the victim very often. They do sometimes if they need to shift a conversation to move, but mostly they spend their time inhabiting this like rescuer savior mentality. And I'm wondering if it's better to start looking at them as two distinct groups because they might have distinct psychological profiles.
Well, yeah, the white liberal ladies are very, very difficult to deal with. They are.
That's a very kind way of putting it.
It's like, well, actually, I believe in liberalism, and I think all of us
Me
here
too.
and most of us in this like group of people, we all believe in liberalism, which is because, you know, that's why we're speaking up, because we're against the illiberalism. But then liberal in the kind of way of like how America calls liberals leftists sort of interchangeably. So these kind of like, let's say white woke ladies, they are just, Jesus Christ, the biggest nightmare. They are so difficult to deal with, and they'll sort of tell you what you're meant to think about, like your life experience, for example, or they call me alt-right all the time, and it's like, I'm South Asian. These are our values. You know, it's got nothing to do with alt-right. They don't know what alt-right means, because if they came across an actual alt-right person, they'd know it, and it wouldn't be nice. And they it's like they have a hierarchy in their head that they really do believe in white supremacy more than anyone else, because they do think that they're the superior ones. And I think they look down on people of color, and especially on Black people. And I think they overcompensate by then fetishizing Black people in this super creepy, horrible way. Like, yeah, they're just really a bunch of creeps. That's like, I do not like dealing with them, and they're so unpleasant. And so, like, I'm gonna sound like such an old lady, but like they have no manners. They don't know how to talk to people, how to treat people, how to. They are really just
no class.
No class.
No class at all, and they're very. They're high on that list of 4 things that you named. They're very high on the moral elitism, as you mentioned, like the ones who have the savior complex, and you know, they know everything. They're a better person than you, because, and I also think you're right. This is something we've been circling around for a while. I think you're right about the fact that they do believe in white supremacy. Yeah, and they a lot of them have racist attitudes about people of color, about Black people. They, you know, Robin DiAngelo is a great example in her book, White Fragility. She talks about how she didn't, at the picnic she went to, she was afraid she was going to have to sit with the Black women. She had these prejudiced views. And I think what this ideology does is it allows white women who have these sort of racist, prejudiced views, it allows them to get rid of any personal responsibility for their character flaws, for their racist views. And then they have this sort of, they get to collectivize their guilt. They're it's
like splitting, sort of.
Yeah, it's
right?
all white people. We all have this. It's just how I was born. All white people are born with this kind of racism. We're all like this. And then you shirk the personal responsibility for your racist opinions. And then you go out, and someone like Robin DiAngelo starts preaching it even. And then it's such a weird way of trying to launder your own sin of like, I'm now, you're laundering it and you're taking it out and you're like, I'm one of the good ones now because I'm here to tell you that I'm racist and we're all racist, you know? And it's, and then here's the crazy thing, the white people who don't hold racist views like her, in her messed up ideology, they become the bad guys. Because it's like, well, you won't admit to it. You won't admit that you have this sin in you.
It's a Kafka trap, right?
Yeah,
it's a Kafka trap, and it's sort of like, it's like a 5-year-old playground logic of well, I know you are, but what am I, or whatever. That like that.
Look, on behalf of 5-year-olds, I think you've insulted them all, and you should take that back.
Microaggression against the 5-year-old. Like it's. And yeah, Robin DiAngelo is just, I don't know her. I don't know what's in her head. She might be a very lovely woman to talk to if you met her, but those things she says just make me think you're such a creepy lady, like such a weird, creepy lady. Yeah. Like, what are the things you're going on about? Like, I can't even conceive of it, that if you're going to the park and you see two parties, a white party and a party of more black people. It's like she's writing in her book, she's scared to party with black people, and then she's telling everyone else that they're racist. Like,
yes.
In fairness, maybe she's a bad dancer, and I would understand the apprehension
probably
there.
Yeah, well, anyway, the black people probably have better food, so I'd go there.
Yeah.
To that party. And like who I don't know, just again, all these things, they're sort of like, they've created their Instagram and Twitter and online like weird woke bubble of reality that is actually not reality. Because in real life, like, I live in a pretty white area now. I've just moved from a pretty black area, which I guess makes me a white supremacist now. But I moved because of the pandemic and where I lived, and because we've just been on and off in lockdowns for pretty much an entire year now. They're threatening another lockdown, and I just wanted to live somewhere that was quiet and I had a bit more space. So I had to move slightly out of London, kind of on the border. Because you just get a bit more for your money here, I guess. And there's a park basically on my doorstep, and there's, you know, London being London, it's full of all kinds of, it's really a melting pot, it really is. And there's people of all ethnicities in the park because the sun is shining. People have a chat and a conversation because we're not quite in the city where everyone's a bit sort of like antisocial and avoidant. And you don't see that in real life. You go to the park and you see kids of different colors playing together, and you know, the mums of different colors all having a chat and a giggle together, and, you know, being like, oh, isn't the weather nice? Because that's the English favorite topic is the weather. And you don't see that. And I know that in America there's a different sort of specific issue of racism, and it, you know, but even that, like, all the black not woke people that I follow, all of them are like, yeah, I don't know what you're going on about, but this doesn't apply to our lives. You're making up weird, odd things. Like, I follow a physics student, Eric's electrons, and he's brilliant. He's so lovely, and he is so reasoned and well thought out, and his criticisms are great. Clifton Duncan is great. He's so clever, and he's he's just brilliant. Wilfred Riley, there's like so many of them who all have such clever things to say, and no one wants to listen to them. Well, what does that tell you? Is this really about black people? Doesn't sound like it.
No, they do not. They betray what they really believe. And this is something, I'm still in some woke social justice groups on Facebook, and it's amazing that the people in the groups can't see this because they've become so brainwashed. But you will have a lot of white women in these groups who, when you point out to them, they've just learned some of the tenets of the ideology. One being, you know, if you're a white person, you need to shut up and listen to black voices.
Yeah.
However, if you share a black voice in this group, if you share someone like a Clifton Duncan, or, you know, if you share, God forbid, you share Candace Owens or someone who's actually conservative and black, then you see very quickly they don't actually abide by what they speak. They speak, listen to black voices, but they don't listen to black voices. What they really mean is listen to social justice voices. Yeah. And if they're black, we'll put them up on a pedestal. But just listen to social justice voices, period. And if they're white and they're social justice voice, we will listen to them too. We will listen to Robin DiAngelo, you know.
Well, she's sort of been cancelled a bit, at least as far as I've seen on Instagram. Not really cancelled, but sort of like disavowed a little bit, where a lot of people, usually people who've written their own book, have to say that, why are you listening to a white woman? You should be listening to...
I've been waiting for this.
Of course.
Yeah. It always happens. This has been happening for decades, and I used to watch it while I was in it. I would watch it happen, and they tear down the leaders, and then new ones will emerge.
Yeah. Yeah. They are like crabs in a bucket, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, and Robin DiAngelo's only possible response, if she's not going to be a hypocrite, is, yes, you shouldn't read my book. You should read these other books. Like, that's That's they're correct
Instead, she wrote
according to that
another one.
ideology.
There's a new book
Yeah.
coming
Did
out.
she? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I
the
have
new
a-
book is her hilarious self-own. I can't remember the name of the title exactly, but it's something like The Damage Done by White Liberals or something like that.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
amazing.
Wait, and I'm gonna look it up now.
Oh my goodness. That's actually in White Fragility. She mentions that. She says, one of the things I agree with in her book, she says the greatest harm perpetrated against people of color these days is by white liberals.
It's called Nice Racism: How Progressive White People Perpetuate Racial Harm.
Yeah.
I totally agree. You're
Robin
one of them.
DiAngelo
Robin.
story.
Yeah. Like,
The Robin DiAngelo story. They need to make a Lifetime movie about her at the picnic. Like they could dramatize that in a Lifetime.
So
Which table do I go
embarrassing.
to?
what if this book is a 180 and she
it's not.
has stopped being woke? No.
No, I know exactly what this book is.
If it
for-
is,
If
If it is, and we really believe what we believe, then we should welcome her. But
Yeah.
Yes,
No, I agree.
I agree, but that's not going to be what it is. What
Yeah.
she's doing is she's going after the people who are most likely to be won over by this religion, by this ideology, who are people who identify as progressive or liberal.
yeah,
And so she's shaming them and saying, look, you think of yourself as not racist, but you are guilty of this. And she's trying to get those people. Why write a book that's aimed at conservatives? She doesn't think she's going to get them. But like, if I can shame the progressives, people like the friend you mentioned, actual progressives, actual socialists who are not woke, if I can get them woke, that's what that book is about, I think. That's how she talked about it in the first book, that, whenever she mentioned the quotes I agreed with about, the difference here is when she says the most harm done is by white progressives or white liberals, she doesn't mean white wokes.
Right. I was going to
She
say, you
doesn't
don't
mean
actually
white
agree
words.
with her because you haven't come to terms with her as an author, in the sense that she's using a word and you're just taking a different definition of
Right.
the word and saying, I agree with those sounds if they mean different things. Well, that's
Yeah,
not
she
really
doesn't-
agreement with her.
She doesn't mean white wokies.
to pull every day anyway. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a serious question for you. Can I take this in a different direction?
Sure.
And this is maybe very involved. So we get a lot of messages. Occasionally we get messages from people that are pretty serious in nature. Emails, sometimes comments, Facebook messages. I get messages on Twitter from people who want help and understanding how to navigate relationships with loved ones who have become very woke. And because I left the ideology, they want to know, like, what advice would you give? What helped to wake you up, kind of thing. And I do my best to answer as many of these people as possible, but I'm not a therapist. And I wonder, have you counseled people who have children or grandchildren who've tried to cut off contact with them because of wokeness, or do you have, or spouses? We hear from spouses sometimes that, like, my spouse fell heavily into this a few years ago and now thinks I'm a white supremacist, or my child went to college and now thinks I'm a white supremacist and doesn't want to have contact with me. And I can't tell you the number of people who've sent us messages like this. What kind of advice would you give to people? And that's maybe a really tough question. So, but any bits of wisdom that you might have there.
It's a really tough one, but it's that's the reality we're living in now, isn't it? And the thing about wokeness is that it's anti-relational. So when you think about any kinds of relational skills, or things that facilitate relationships and facilitate connection, it's anti all of those. How can you be, if you're in a wokish group, you have to be you can't even trust your friends, because if you said the wrong thing to your friend's going to cancel you. Mm-hmm. So which reminds me a lot of like some of the things I've read about Iran and the secret police after the revolution, where they're so frightened, or other Middle Eastern countries where they have religious police, where you have to be so careful what you say, what you think, how you say it, who you're seen with, who you even follow on the internet, and that's what they're creating. So in that kind of hyper-vigilant environment where you're constantly watching your back, you can't form real relationships. And I haven't really counseled anyone like in my practice with who've been through this sort of thing, but I think unfortunately we're in a place now where people are going to cut you off, and I think we have to accept that's what we're living through in this moment. So it might not be forever, but that's what's happening. And I've lost a lot of friends since I started talking about things on Twitter. And people like been there for, like helped even materially in some cases, and they cut you off without, like, they drop you like you're not even a person, and it really hurts, and it is not nice, but that's where we are. And I think part of the suffering around this is wanting it to be different, and I'm not sure wanting it to be different is going to do anything. I think the best you can do is keep, I guess from your end, leave the door open. Like, if you decide to see things for yourself, and you want to come out of this cult, like the same probably how parents of or family members of people who've gotten into cults feel, just that I leave the door open for whenever you're ready. I don't judge you for thinking this, or maybe actually that's not true. I do kind of judge some of you for thinking this when you know better, but there are lots of vulnerable people who get sucked into it, and I guess for them I'd say that. And the friends I have kept who are kind of woke or woke within me, it's because they're not really woke, I guess, in a way. They believe these weird narratives, and they're compassionate, good people, and they really care. But they're also people who kind of fundamentally, at the core of them, they really believe in liberalism. So they're okay to agree to disagree.
Yes.
And they're also people who believe in, they're people who believe in loyalty and, some of those kinds of values. So those are some of the few relationships I've retained. And also people who are not maybe as agreeable as most of the woke are. So people who they're okay with being associated with you, because that's a big one, who you're seen to be associated with. And also people who have the kind of brain and the common sense to think, well, actually, I know her, and I know what she's like, and I know that she's a really caring and supportive friend, and, like, not perfect, but good person. People like that. So those are the few people I've retained, and they are few. Yeah. I imagine your experience has been similar.
Very similar, yeah. I had a few who are still friends with me, though they believe in, I like the way you put it, these false narratives. Maybe they push some of the woke belief tenets of the belief system, but there's something about them that's still actually liberal and actually open-minded, and like you said, maybe disagreeable. That's a good, I hadn't thought of that before, but an aspect of their personality that is okay being friends with an unperson like me. but mostly, it's mostly I had the great unfriending happen, in my woke world. And most of them walked away, and a few of them publicly denounced me. And but I have been lucky in that, the kind of messages I was talking about, I haven't had someone that close to me, like a spouse or a child, turn against me. And I think you're right. I think it is a lot for those people. I usually suggest they watch cult documentaries or try to learn what people do, like you said, when their children get sucked into a cult, because it is, I think it shares a lot in common with cults. It has a lot of the cult characteristics, this belief system. It tells them to cut off contact. And I think leaving the door open is also important. We did get to, I got feedback from a young guy once who he had become woke in college. He had pretty much denounced his dad, called him white supremacist, all these things. Really, like you said, it's anti-relational. So he was constantly fighting with his dad and arguing. And he said, the thing that mattered to me was during all those years, my dad left the door open, what you said. My dad still let me know that he loved me. And he would still disagree with me, but he would treat me in a loving way, even when I didn't treat him in a loving way. And I think that's really important.
Especially for parent-child relationships or relationships that are, of that kind of significance, siblings and maybe very close friends or whoever.
Yeah.
And I think, what it made me think about was that series that Leah Remini did about Scientology. And she kind of interviews all these different people who've left the cult of Scientology and how they were then treated by the cult. It's so they label the person who leaves a suppressive person, which means a bad, evil unperson, as you put it. And then they do these, essentially like a cancel campaign. They make up fake things about them. They spread them around. They turn everybody still in the cult against that person because they make up all these things and put up these fake websites and harass the person. So they follow them around. They surveil them. They bug their house if they can. They're really freaks, like scary, scary, scary stuff they do to people. Try running someone off the road, like just psychopathic again. And that's exactly how the woke behave. They behave just like that. Exactly the same psychological mechanisms that Scientologists use against people who left Scientology. And the way families have been broken apart. I mean, fortunately, we're not at that much of a level yet, but it's getting there. It is getting there. Like, how many, I imagine every single one of us who talks about this publicly has gone through what you described as the great unfriending. And you said it, and I was like, God, yeah, that's exactly what it was. Exactly what it was. And I think it's worth watching that, because those cult dynamics and the way they rip people apart, they actually they ruin people's lives. Like, how can your life be great if your child thinks that you're some sort of a monster? How can you be happy and well if your partner thinks you're a white supremacist?
Yeah.
One thing that you said that I think is probably the hardest to hear, but I think the most important, is this reality focus of they're anti-relational, so you can't use the tools that you might normally try and use to repair a relationship or convince someone or come to terms or, have any kind of negotiation won't work. They are in this kind of anti-relational mindset. And so I think that's a painful reality for someone to hear. Like, the answer is there isn't a silver bullet, usually. Suck it up, keep the door open. Like, that's a crappy answer, but it's the right answer, right?
Yeah.
Like, no one wants to hear that.
It's a crappy reality. I think that's why people get angry at me on Instagram as well, is because nobody wants to hear the crappy reality, really. People want to hear nice, pretty lies, and that's not going to get you anywhere. And I think, like, I talk about this a lot, about the concept of acceptance, and acceptance doesn't mean approval. I think that's something that's really fundamental to understand. Acceptance doesn't mean approval, but acceptance, it allows you to get grounded again. You're constantly warring with, I wish the past was different, I wish the present is different, wish I was different, I wish whatever. You're creating a war within yourself. But acceptance is sort of like a ceasefire, I don't love this, I don't like it. Or even if you're, I say this to myself sometimes, if I'm in a, every now and again we all find ourselves just in a rotten mood. And sometimes it's a rotten mood that's like a really low mood, and it feels sucky and shit and you feel horrible. And one way to deal with that is to take out on everybody around you. And another way to deal with it is to, try and numb it and make it go away or whatever. Instead, like, I think quite a powerful way of dealing with it is to say, I don't like this is how I'm feeling. I don't like one thing about this, but I accept that's what's happening right now. And as soon as you accept it, it takes such a big sting out of it.
I've read studies about neurological studies about how when you verbalize and acknowledge what emotion you're feeling, that it can have an effect on the level that you're feeling it. So if you say out loud, I am very angry right now, just something about acknowledging it verbally and paying attention to it for that moment, then they've done studies where then people report that their anger level subsides.
It would, because when you think about anger, it's such a rush of energy. And sometimes it's a rush of energy that's kind of diffused. It's not focused on something. That's why you see somebody, they'll come out of the room and they'll punch the wall, they'll kick the cat and then stomp down the stairs. Because you're sort of like, it's like you're intoxicated almost. But when you say it out loud, you're making something tangible. And the same way when you speak, you can refine your thinking, or when you write, you can refine your thinking, as opposed to thinking in your head where there's like one sense here and an emotion here and a confusing, something.
Yeah.
And you say it out loud and you hear it, and it's very impactful. It's really impactful. And as soon as you the other thing about being angry sometimes is that it can make us very defiant, and also it inhibits our like social rule following. I'm angry, and because I'm angry, fuck it, and I'm going to do everything that I don't, wouldn't normally do if I wasn't angry. And then you name it, and be like, yeah, I'm angry, and that's what validation really is. Yeah, I'm angry, and it's not fucking ideal, but I'm angry. So what else could I do or not do? Can I let it pass? And that's also distress tolerance of understanding that you can actually cope with being really angry or really overwhelmed or feeling whatever big emotion. You can actually cope with it. Just let it pass. Stop getting in its way.
Yeah.
Just, I almost want to say lean into it, but just be and let it happen.
Yeah.
Feel it. Something that I've said when talking about epistemology, but actually I noticed on your Instagram today actually was, I don't know when you posted it, but it's you're coming at it from the other angle, and I really love that you came to the same distillation of this. When I talk about epistemology, a lot of people, we end up people having discussions about what role emotions are and what role they play in knowledge. And my position has always been, well, emotions give you valid information about your internal state. They don't tell you anything about the external world at all, but they do tell you your internal state, and that's information. And that's information you can use. And I'm just going to read one of your Instagram posts that I really like, which you write, your relationship to your emotions will change when you view them as information. And you crossed out, why is this happening to me? And you put, what is this telling me? And I think that's a huge tool. I just want to pause on it for a moment because it's related to what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, informations aren't just these ephemeral states that exist to torture us. It's telling you something. Like if I get triggered because Keri's wearing a hat. I'm not. If I was.
Oh, good. I can relate to this one. Keep going.
By the way, this happens every once in a while. We have a comment from someone who's really angry that I like to wear hats, and I'm like, wow, what's wrong with you?
You don't have a lot going on if this is what you're cross about. But if you're, if that came up for me, then the question, the you don't want to then, well, Keri has to take off her hat so I can feel okay. That's not the right way to approach it. It's why is that coming up for me? Why is someone wearing a hat making me upset? And then you have to think about, have I felt this way before? What was going on then? Why do I feel this way? What is this telling me about me? And that kind of understanding is and that kind of self-awareness is honestly life-changing.
You know what? Yeah. I love that you use this example in particular, because now we can play the whole analogy out. I've thought about this because I have wondered, why do some people react so emotionally to something so innocuous? It's ridiculous.
So innocuous.
A fashion choice of mine. And I think it is because probably they don't have enough self-confidence to wear whatever they want, regardless of what people think. And seeing me wear something that they think is silly or stupid or that they don't have the confidence to wear, it makes them angry at themselves. And I can't sit with it. It's this weird kind of, you being free enough to do what you want makes me aware of the fact that I'm not.
Sorry, we have to pause for 1 sec. No, it's true. And it's, I think that speaks to why the woke hate all of us, is because they aren't free. They aren't free to say what they really think. And they're very, very resentful of anyone who feels free enough to not only say what they think, but pay the cost and keep speaking. Like, yeah, come at me. I'm not going to stop. And I think there's a deep, there's a deep desire in them, because every human being has the desire to self-actualize and want to be authentic. And, think about when any of us were more woke. It's not nice, is it? It's a pretty shitty place of frame of mind to be in. And it's not nice to swallow your truth constantly. I hate this term, your truth. I can't believe I just said that, because there's no your truth and my truth. It's the truth.
Thank you. Thank you for the correction, but yes.
Yeah.
I
your
know
authenticity.
Exactly.
You're being inauthentic, and it hurts to be inauthentic. And I think we've all been in, whether it's woke or not. A lot of times it's in relationships, frankly, when you're young. They can often start out inauthentic, and it's never enjoyable to remain in an inauthentic relationship.
It's not. I think that's such a disservice we do in the start of relationships, where everyone is on their best behavior. And the best behavior sort of means being what you think other people will find attractive, or what that other person is going to think, what you think that person wants, instead of being as much your weird self as possible.
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, when I met my wife, I intentionally sat her down and tried to scare her away. I'm like, on this and this and this, these are the things I think. What do you think about that? And she wanted another date. So
that's what happens when you're honest. Is you actually, if you find an authentic person, then they're attracted to that authenticity. And I think what you just said, it reminded me of the Shel Silverstein poem, Masks. Do you know this poem? It's an old poem. Mask. It said, she had blue skin and so did he. He kept it hid, and so did she. They searched for blue their whole life through, then passed right by and never knew.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Because you're just going into interactions with what you said, that sort of mask of what do I think other people will want to see, and let me put that mask on. And that absolutely. That social justice people do that because they have to wear a mask, and I used to run everything that I thought through a filter of make sure I didn't say anything ideologically impure. Every utterance on social media had to be put through my filter, and you're not being your authentic self. And I didn't even realize it. Some people who are in it that don't even realize it, but I'll tell you, once you're out of it and you're free, it's like night and day. You don't have that fear every time you utter something. You don't have that sort of anxiety about making sure you are not taken out of context and or that you accidentally trip a wire in your own belief system and get piled on, anyway.
You just made me think of an interesting test, Keri. I wonder if this is true. I'm just making this up, but I imagine that if I spent a day my prefrontal cortex just went away and I just blurted out whatever I was thinking all the time to everyone that I cared about. They'd probably be like, he's in a pissy mood, and they might get mad at me, but they wouldn't cease to be my friends and family. They would the next day they would still be there. Mm-hmm. And if that's not true, probably something's wrong in your relationships. Either you're not being authentic, and it would be so shocking that they would think that you've gone off the rails, or you don't actually have friends, because you can't have friends if you're not authentic, which is why we say that they have allies, just like you can't be in a real relationship with someone if you're not authentic with them. I don't know. That's my...
No, it is true. And
try that experiment.
I think that's kind of what being someone with ADHD is like. Blurting out everything all the time. It's a good acid test. But it's true. And I found that, like, exactly what you described, of this internal filter and like making sure you don't say anything that's ideologically impure. I think I had to sort of like slightly retrain myself, and I'd make myself, and I still do sometimes, make myself say the thing that I'm scared to say. Like, no, because I'm scared to say it, I'm going to say it, because I shouldn't be.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've gone through that same thing, and it still will come up occasionally. I don't experience as much fear about saying the thing, but when I notice the fear, I try to do what you're doing. Is okay, then I have to do that. Or like for me, public speaking, when I can, not podcasting, but public speaking when I can see a bunch of people in the room, still scares me. So I'm forcing myself to do it more and more. Because I want to be able to. Eventually, I don't want that to be a fear. But
Keri, I think you're in a particular phase. I'm gonna psychologize Keri right now. I think that you just left woke like recently, a couple of years ago. Because this is what happened to me when I left Christianity, and the next few years after that, I turned into poke the Christians atheist. I was constantly I was in your face, bothering the Christians, and like now I'm like, oh, I don't care. People are Christian, it's fine. Like that's toned down. I wonder, because sometimes you tell stories about like I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I'm like, wow, that's pretty in your face poking the wokies. I love it. It's awesome to watch. But like, sometimes you're pretty in your face poking the wokies. And I'm kind of like, the wokies.
Yeah, I think what you said is so true. Not just I think anyone, as soon as you leave something that's sort of like an authoritarian or fundamentalist ideology, like when I left India and came here, I was like really misspent my youth for a while doing every single thing.
The bad Catholic girl analogy.
Skydiving, drinking every day, just like doing everything I didn't need to. Not skydiving, paragliding. I'm not that brave. And, just doing every single thing that you were constrained from doing before. I think you go through a period of overcorrection. Like when I started my Twitter, almost every one of my tweets was an angry rant, like every single one of them, because I'd been keeping it in for so long. And then you just kind of, it's okay. Like I think you sometimes have to overcorrect because a part of you is scared of sliding backwards. That's part of it as well. And I think
you have to show that you're capable of standing on your own and resisting it. And once you're convinced of that yourself, you can relax a little bit.
And you soften then a bit, don't you? You kind of soften a bit. You don't even have necessarily anything that fundamental or core against them. Like, I don't like your beliefs. I think sometimes you guys behave like in a way that's absolutely psychopathic. But as an individual, and of course I don't hate you. Why would I hate you? I don't even know you.
Actually, I'll push back on your psychologizing me, Carter, just a little bit, because I think some of the poking is just a way of making fun of wokeness, which I think we should do.
Yeah,
I think we have to use a sense of humor. And I actually am still more empathetic towards people who are woke in some ways than you are. Like there's a friend of mine, one of the friends we were talking about before, Seerut. I have a friend who she still espouses woke ideology. She actually makes content that's woke for kids. But she's a good person. She has a good heart, and I know her intentions are in the right place. And she's still my friend. I will still have lunch with her when she's in town. And the fact that she's social justice, she hasn't unfriended me, tells me there's something open-minded about her. And so I'm still open. I still leave that door open. It's not like I hate everyone who's woke. I don't, in fact.
I wasn't trying to suggest you hate them, but you do like aggravating them.
I do poke them a bit.
And I think there's a difference for me with wokes, though. I was never woke. I was never a leftist ever in my entire life. The closest I became was like you know, I mean, I'm liberal on a lot of social issues like gay marriage and that kind of stuff, but like I was never a leftist and I was never a wokie. So I don't feel the need to poke at them because they didn't really personally harm me. But I also don't really feel a lot of compassion for them. They just seem like these crazy others to me that I'm like, you guys are ruining the world. You're crazy. Like,
yeah,
that's,
I went
right?
through
I'm
that
detached.
Definitely went through that phase of thinking that they're crazy, others. There you go. I just did an ableism microaggression by using the word crazy. Just want to note that.
We should have that flash on screen whenever.
Yeah. But, you know, like, I definitely went through a phase of thinking you lot are just, you know, you're like othered them. And then I kind of pulled myself back from that because I think that's what they do. They other people and dehumanize them and then destroy them. And every single sort of terrible ideology that's gotten into power and committed atrocities in history has started that way. And that's what they do to anyone who's white. And then they give their bullshit, you know, but no, racism is power plus blah, blah, blah. And it's not. Like, just because you're saying it over and over again and making infographics doesn't mean it's true. Racism is racism, and what you're doing is racist.
Yes.
And, you know, so othering people like that, dehumanizing people, I think we have to, well, maybe not everyone, I don't know, but at least for me, make a conscious effort to humanize because it's so seductive and so easy to go the other way, especially when people are behaving in ways that you just could not only never like behave that way yourself, but it wouldn't even occur to you to do some of those things. Like it would never even cross your mind. And it's easy. And yeah, fuck yeah, you can be angry and you can judge them if you want, but you have to still hang on to something that's like, yeah, this is a person who's loved by other people. They probably have a pet. They're really nice too. They've got loves and passions and their own thing. And they feel the same fear and need for acceptance and, you know, the same things that all of us feel. And I think there's something about that. You got to hang on to that. Can't lose that, because I think that's one of the bedrocks of a liberal society. Yeah. Because that actually makes you tolerant.
When I say othering, I do mean it. I do other
I didn't mean you that way.
It's but I don't want to be clear. I think there's a difference between dehumanizing and so I think it's healthy to have you should have a baseline understanding that everyone else is a human and deserves some sort of treatment as a human being, right? Like that makes sense. But I guess when I say othering, I mean kind of like almost like they don't matter in a cosmic way. Like their ideas matter, and I'm fighting their ideas. But this happened actually with Christians that were in my life that I went from being very attached to being very angry at, to being indifferent towards, where I'm now like, they don't really matter. Like they matter as humans. Okay, fine. Like they're probably nice to their pets and blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't wish them harm, but they don't matter. They don't, their existence doesn't upset me.
On your life and on you.
Yeah. Their choices that I don't agree with don't upset me. They're like, it just doesn't have a bearing on who I am. And I think for some reason, I think we're in a world in which everyone feels like they have to have an opinion about how someone else has bearing on them. And the truth is, most people don't have any bearing on you, really. Like, it doesn't really matter to you, mostly, what most people do. But we seem to have like this mentality of, it's like a busybody mentality. I don't like something you're doing, and therefore I've got to either like join your tribe, like if I gotta get you in my tribe so I love you, or put you into that tribe so I hate you. But we've lost the third option of like, I'm just neutral.
I'm not participating. Yeah.
Right. I
think that's really healthy. I think what you've described is really, really healthy. And I agree. I think I'm starting to come to that place with the people who tried to cancel me. Like I would not let them anywhere near me, strong boundaries, but because they can't be trusted. They just can't. And that's how I feel about a lot of them. Like, you can't be trusted. I wouldn't put you in charge of a sweet shop, but like, do your thing. You don't matter. What you have to say about me doesn't actually bend reality, and it doesn't matter. And Yeah,
So, Rut,
I think it's really healthy.
were you woke? Would you describe yourself as previously? Were you woke?
Very
Or were you?
briefly, very briefly. And when I was, I was one real asshole is like the best way to put it. Like I was such an asshole. I don't like woke me that much. I yeah, briefly I made some infographics and unfortunately
That's a red flag to wokeness. First it's infographics. Next thing you're dyeing your hair.
oh god. No, like I was for a few months, and then luckily for me, I'm not a complete idiot. So as soon as I saw some data, that snapped me out of it pretty quickly. And yeah, God, I was a real asshole is the best way I can put it.
Can you describe then, having been someone who was briefly in it and also being a therapist? As I said, Carter and I have theorized about some of the psychology behind it, but in your opinion, what are some of the reasons that it's seductive? How does it pull people in?
Pulls people in because you think that you're part of something bigger and something that gets a lot of reward and recognition. That's very seductive. The people younger than us, so they're kind of all, for them, social group is really, really important. They're still kind of socializing into the world. And if all your friends are woke, yes, you kind of can't escape it for a little while. I think as well, it's meaning, gives you a framework to look at the world and bring some meaning into your life. You feel like you're part of a community, even though the community is sort of like kind of rabid and wants to cancel you if you put a toe wrong. It's still a community. I think as well, there's so much here, but Jonathan Haidt lays it out really well. And it's all these failed parenting strategies that have conditioned people into something that looks like vulnerable narcissism. So you need a lot of attention, and you get a lot of attention if you behave the way they behave, I suppose. They've been taught that wokeness isn't a really badly thought out gibberish political ideology. They've been taught to think that it's morality. So that people who are high in agreeableness, they're very scared of being seen by anyone as not on the side of morality or on the side of good. And then it also uses people's compassion against them. So, it kind of, and uses a lot of really antisocial tactics, like guilt trips people and makes you think, if you don't think this or believe this, then obviously you're a racist. And accusing someone of something abhorrent like racism is, most people get really frightened. Like I think even any of us probably has taken some time and some practice and quite a lot of experience to get to the point where, no, I'm not. And that's that. A lot of people don't have that. Mm. They're not able to do that. Sorry, I have a piercing here, so my headphone keeps falling out. They're terrified. That's like a knee-jerk response, and rightly so, because they think that if you don't subscribe to the anti-racism by Kendi way of thinking about things, then you have to be a racist. There's so much to it, and again, you're like, people are bombarded with this messaging. Like now, from like you guys in the States, you have it from your administration. The establishment is now going woke, or companies are constantly virtue signaling, and they know that that's how you keep customers and clients, because now you have really angry like 21-year-olds calling out people on Twitter and Instagram, and then like television and film are becoming more and more woke, and it's
if you're not the kind of person who can either stop and say, hang on, this is a bit weird, and start thinking about things for yourself, or if you haven't listened to someone who kind of breaks it down pretty easily, because it's very easy to break down once you start thinking about it, because there's nothing to it really. Like logically, it's completely inconsistent. So sometimes you have to hear someone else and think, oh my God, yeah, I've thought this too inside. Am I allowed to think this? People need that. That's why I think, and that's why I talk about it.
Yeah.
This is related, and I think you touched on this, but what are some of the bad parenting, maybe not even intentionally parenting decisions, but what are some of the bad things that have led to the psychological vulnerability that is being exploited here?
The big one is self-esteem parenting, where they think that if you inculcate in your child that they're very, very special and very important, and they can go on and be and do anything, that's going to give your child really healthy, robust self-esteem. Actually, what it's done is give, giving someone tons and tons of praise without a reason, like an accomplishment or behavior, that seems to create something that looks like narcissism as opposed to healthy self-esteem. So praise without a reason is not a good idea, and that doesn't mean, and that's sort of like what coddling culture is. That doesn't mean you have to be horrible and insult anybody, but you can praise effort. You can be a loving parent without constantly telling your child how special they are. That doesn't, and then you end up with all these young adults who have grown up thinking they're gonna do something massive because they're that special. I'm so special that I'm gonna become a rock star, or I'm gonna get really famous, or I'm gonna join this company, I'm gonna get promoted to vice president in 3 months because I'm that special. And then the world doesn't reflect back to them that they're actually special. The world's like, no, you're like everyone else. You're not as special as you seem to think you are. And then they become deflated and depressed. And
resentful, I imagine.
A lot.
Because it's external reasons that, right? They view it as an external problem. If I didn't become a vice president in 3 years, it must be the world that's the problem because I know I'm special.
And that's what narcissism sort of thinks. And vulnerable narcissism is very much, that's the sort of key feature. I'm so great. Why don't other people recognize it?
This is what I've heard called covert narcissism before.
Yeah,
is it
same
also
thing,
called
basically.
that? Yeah. Where it's sort of,
I thought covert narcissism was when you were self-deprecating and like doing.
Yes, it's part of the same. It's part of the same because what I read is that a lot of times these people can show up in a therapist's office, and at first you just think the therapist might be inclined to believe all their stories about how the world is turned against them. Everything is, their boss is the worst and their partner's the worst. And this is, they're always the victim and they never get the recognition they deserve. And sometimes you can view it as, it can be mistaken for depression. This person has had a lot of bad things happen to them and they're depressed. When in actuality, it's covert narcissism. And it's sort of, I'm not getting what I am owed out of everyone else and out of the world, and I'm always the victim. Yeah. That's my non-professional way of describing what I read about. Yeah.
I know very little about it. That's why I'm asking about it. But you were reminding me of this isn't a parenting book, but I do think it's important for parents because I read it for entrepreneurial stuff, but I found a lot of value in it as a parent. There's a book called The Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck from Stanford.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean.
Okay.
Oh, you know this book? Yeah. Okay.
It is one of my life Bibles, I would say.
Okay, good.
Love it. Love everything about it. And I think it can have powerful impacts on mental health because so much of now when people present like that, I'm not special and I'm so depressed, and what can sometimes look like depression is actually more like being deflated. And you teach them that actually if you put in the work and you practice and you let some, give yourself some time,
You can change your circumstances. Who you are now does not have to be fixed. I mean, obviously your core personality is kind of fixed, but you can do stuff with it, you know? And teaching people that just because you're depressed and anxious now doesn't mean that that's going to be you in even a year's time, but you have to do some work. And I think it's not, I talk about it in different ways. I reference it without, you know, necessarily naming it constantly on Instagram. And hard work seems to be anathema to people. they don't want to hear that you have to put some work in.
Well, because they were probably never praised for the work when they were kids. They were probably just told. I mean, this is something I consciously tried to do with my daughter. She's 12 now, but like, if she does well on something, not like instead of saying you got an A, you're smart. It's oh, all that studying really paid off. How do you feel about it? And she recognized, I'm just reflecting back. It was the studying that led to the A, and she can then make the evaluation that she feels good about studying hard and then getting an A. Like, bam, that connection happens in her. But it's not a natural thing for a parent to do. At least my generation, I feel like we all want to tell our kids how awesome and special they are all the time. And it was a conscious decision I had to do to stifle that.
Well, they are special and they are really important to you. I think, that's and I think teaching sort of like the difference between letting that kid know that, like, yeah, you're the center of my world. You're fucking amazing. I love you. Right. But you're amazing just like everybody else is, like that aphorism, we're all, you're unique just like everybody else. And kind of explaining, inculcating that sort of understanding and humility that like the world doesn't actually owe you anything, even if you are special.
The world doesn't owe you anything.
Yeah.
I'm realizing, because Seerut, I'm someone who I'm doing a lot of things later in life partially because I was in a cult ideology for 20 years. And so I've been doing some growing up the past 5 or so years. And I would like to try to have kids. And I've been learning a lot from Carter and just the stuff he talks about. But I'm realizing, hearing you both speak, that I can't treat my child, if I'm lucky enough to have a child, the way I do my dog. Because I do tell my dog all the time, you're the most amazing dog in the world.
Wait, actually, that's not a bad analogy, Keri, because I think a lot of people have kids as accessories just like dogs, and they do the same thing with their kids.
And see, it's okay if you say it to your dog, because your dog doesn't know what you're saying anyway. You can tell him all the time, you're the most special dog in the world. But if you say that
By the way, I do the opposite with my cat, but I say it in really nice tones. I tell her how horrible she is. But I say it really nicely, and she loves it.
Yeah, Anthony does that to our dog.
Kind of. My partner's called Anthony as well. Anthony.
What a good name.
Yeah, good name. I don't have a kid yet, and I really want a kid as well. I do have some cats, and it's the same. Yeah, you kind of course you do that, and it's completely different, because this is a little completely dependent animal that's not going to grow up and get a job. And right. Like, I know my cats aren't my kids, but I treat them like they are, because I feel like I took that animal away from its mother. So now it's my responsibility to love it as well, if not better, and make sure it has like the best life ever. And you just you love them. They become part of your family and you love them to bits. But with children, it's a completely different role. It's a different responsibility, isn't it? Because your responsibility isn't just to love them. It's also to help them develop and to be a guardian, not just of their physical safety, I suppose, but also of them developing into a person that's not a fucking insufferable nightmare.
Yes.
That's kind of important.
Right.
And that, you feel like there's a brilliant, I don't remember who said this, but it was like, I'm going to give my kids enough money to do something, but not to do nothing. And I think that encapsulates it really well.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. Yeah.
I often tell my daughter that I'm not parenting for her to like me. I'm parenting for her 30-year-old self to appreciate me.
Oh,
Like,
that's so nice.
and so it's like,
yeah.
but right, it's not right now. I don't care whether you hate me right now. I care whether you hate me when you're 30. Like, that's
Yeah.
what I care about.
And that's, again, it comes back to trait agreeableness. People who are very high in agreeableness, they need everyone to like them. And it's the same with, you know, the kind of people who want their children to think they're cool and that see them as a friend. Like, of course you can be a friend to your kid, but that kid only has one parent or two parents, and has 30 or so friends. Like, you have one fucking job, do it. Stop trying to be a friend. And yeah, I completely agree with that.
Can I just say, back when I was in therapy, I wish you had been my therapist. Like, you just, yeah. So this leads into another question I had. Do you know, I have people sometimes ask me, do you know of any non-woke therapists? Do you happen to know, is there a network of non-woke therapists?
A secret black book of non-woke therapists?
Actually, I kind of do. So I'm at the moment, I've got a few openings. So usually I don't, but I've been making some changes in my practice. So I have a couple. And there is an absolutely brilliant organization called Critical Therapy Antidote. I'll send you the link after this.
Okay.
And
We'll put it in
they
the show
are
notes.
therapists who are trying to protect therapy from, well, critical theory ruining it. And it's a network of therapists who are not woke, who care about the discipline and, you know, the sacredness of our profession. And it's a great network, and they constantly send around emails saying, here we have a person inquiring from this place for this reason, who's got an availability, who wants to help. And that's how, so if people don't want a woke therapist, this is a great organization.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's super helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Run by a lady called Val Thomas. She's written for New Discourses before as well. And she's great. And I think a few other people. I'm not completely sure. I know of Val. And it's a great group for therapists to join as well. If there are any therapists watching and you, I mean, they have to be careful. I don't think they let everyone in, because you don't want some woke person coming in with, you know, what they're like. Exactly.
Right.
Well,
Trying to dox people and
Yep.
ruin
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
but that's a good group.
I'm so happy. I knew things like this were going to start to evolve. That, you know, in all these different areas, I think there's a hunger now for something that's authentic, that's not woke. And so whether it's therapy or, you know, help in the workplace for fighting back against race theory, Counterweight is a great example. In the comic book world, you know, people started making their own comics. And I sort of think, you know, human ingenuity will win out in the end.
Definitely.
Because there are niches that need to be filled. So that makes me very happy.
I think that's such a beautiful way to put it. And it's true. And we're adaptable. And this is a small, loud, annoying group of people who've unfortunately picked up some institutional power because they're slimy and cunning, and they kind of slither their way into places in a very backhanded way. Yeah. But the majority of people don't feel the way they feel. And a lot of their own ranks don't believe what they're saying. And like, you know, Counterweight, New Discourses is so fantastic. Like, if you want to understand this stuff, like, I can't stress enough how much you must read that. And then people like James Lindsay and Chris Rufo going out there and doing real world things to help preserve things for the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There are some very brave people out there doing a lot of good things, and this is important too. You know, this is really important, because this is how we, at the moment, this is our third place. It's sort of, social media is the town square, right? And so we need some other voices in the town square. So what you're doing is really, really important. That's cool.
Well, thank you. I am so happy that you blessed us with your time and insight today. And
thank you for having me. It's been such a lovely conversation, and I'd love to do it again in the future, but like in real life with like a drink or a coffee. That would be so great.
Yeah.
I would love
you
that.
know what? I love these conversations, but I am so frustrated that they're not live, because I think all these conversations would be so much more fun.
They would
sitting across the table from someone and having a conversation. It would be really great.
Hey, if we ever come to the UK, which we were talking about doing a documentary that might take us there at some point when lockdowns and stuff are over, we will definitely meet up with you there. And because we've got a list of people, we should just go anyway, as long as they don't make me have a vaccine passport
and go on a pub crawl.
You will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're ever in Texas, that's where I'm at.
I'm kind of want to come to America to meet all my friends I'm making of these like amazing people, and I keep getting put off because of the fog. And
yes.
Like, oh, do I really want to go there? They're doing such bloody weird things. But there's like I want to come to Texas. I want to meet you. I want to meet Clifton. I want to meet James. James and his wife Heather, because she's so lovely. And there's all these just like wonderful people that I've been lucky enough to meet that I'd love to see you all in real life. Yeah. Maybe when maybe you just have to be brave and calm.
Well, let me know.
Get all those people in one spot. Those are a lot of James. Yeah. I forget somewhere in Tennessee or somewhere.
Virginia, Tennessee. Yeah. Tennessee.
I don't remember. Yeah. But we can get them all in. Texas is the spot to go, probably.
Yes.
So yeah.
I'm trying to get all the Californians coming to Texas.
Okay, so here's what I think now. Thank you for asking. I'm trying to recruit people because we have such an influx already that and you can't stop the flow of people. So I want to recruit the right people, and the people I think are the right people, who are free thinkers and freedom lovers and individualists and people who believe in live and let live, which is it's really a part of Texas's history. Texas is all about live and let live. And even the conservatives here in Texas are more libertarian minded than they are conservative. So I really have been on our show. I'm always telling people, I know that the libertarians have chosen New Hampshire as their free state project.
Some of the libertarians,
but I think we need more than one anyway. And Texas has such a great mythology and history of independence, and we're the only state that still has our own mineral rights. So I think Austin is gone, but if we can get enough wrong thinkers to move here to surround Austin, we might be able to get them to leave. So.
I was just talking about like a meeting in Texas, but
moving here. Hey, I've been doing some good work recruiting, Carter. I got to update you on people who are considering the state now.
Well, I'm not all about Greater Idaho now that I've learned about the Greater Idaho movement. But anyway. Seerut, remind people how they can follow you on Instagram, Twitter, that kind of stuff.
So it's my name, which is a mouthful. So I'm sure you guys will put it in the description or wherever. So yeah, just my name is my handle on Instagram and on Twitter, Seerut K Chawla. And at the moment that's where I am. I don't think I have any other social media. I'm on LinkedIn, but I never look at it. And I have a Facebook page, but I never look at it. Which kind of posts automatically my Instagram content. But those are my two internet homes. I am thinking about videos, but I just keep thinking that I'm just being lazy, really, because it just seems like a lot of work to get set up. But I think I might do that at some point. Yeah. So at the moment, that's it.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. This was a great conversation. I know Keri and I both enjoyed it.
So, I loved it. Thank you both for having me on. It was great fun talking to you guys. And yeah, I feel like I've made new friends.
You have.
Aww.
Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, we have a deep content library that includes interviews with everyone from Mike Cernovich to Megan Murphy, so go check it out. If you'd like to see more, please consider supporting the show by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on all the major social media platforms, at least for now, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space chat on Telegram. See you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production has not been authorized by the Cathedral. Pay no attention to it. The following co-conspirators have been unpersoned and marked for cancellation. They are also spreading vicious lies about me. I am human just like you. Insert localized idiomatic greeting. Individual sovereignty is highly contagious. Good parents keep their children regularly vaccinated. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks of the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.